Tree Farm Committee, and am glad to see each and every one of you here today. A special thank you to Dave Apsley for all his behind-the-scenes work. He sure made a difference in all this going on the way it has, and we appreciate his doing that. Today we'll be presenting the Ohio Tree Farm Committee's Landowner Topics track and kicking off a new program, More Tree Farmers and More Woodland Management. This new program involves more sessions in the future about tree farm, woodland management, and tracking what is being done. Our presenters today will be talking about the American Tree Farm System, various types of woodland management, and securing money and manpower to handle the management projects. Before we start, though, I'd like to introduce Brad Perkins, Executive Director of the Ohio Forestry Association, to review the general guidelines for our Zoom presentation today.
Thanks, Tom. So I know we'll have people joining us today that were on our OFA annual meeting part yesterday, but just a couple things. When you're on your screen, at the bottom of your screen, there's a few menu items. One is a chat function, one is a Q&A function. So I like to use these in a little bit different modes. The Q&A function is great for when presentations are being given and you want to ask a question to those presenters. Put your question in the Q&A, and as time allows, at the end of each presentation, they will get to as many those questions and answer them as they can. But those will also be recorded, so if they don't have time to get those questions taken care of during that presentation, either at the end of the day or even after that, we'll be able to get those questions answered and sent directly to you. Now in the chat function, that's also a great place if you just need to make a comment about a presentation, or for foresters or ISA arborists. That's a place where we need you to put in either your certified forester number, your Ohio SAF number, along with your name, or if you're an ISA person, put that number in there with your name that you're requesting CFEs. So that's the only way we're going to know that to get you the continuing education credits there is to put your name and number in the chat feature. And I see some of the foresters have already been doing that today that were obviously with us yesterday. So otherwise, I think, sit back and relax and enjoy a great presentation here being put on by the Ohio Tree Farm Committee today.
Thank you, Brad. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Kayti Brinkman. It's been great having her around, a national person helping us locally, attending some of our meetings. It's been nice to have you here, Kayti. She will be speaking about the American Forest Foundation and the American Tree Farm System. She is indeed the Northern Regional Manager for the American Forest Foundation. She covers the states from Minnesota to Maine and Maryland to Missouri. She's a certified forester and was previously a tree farm inspector and vice chair for the Michigan Tree Farm Committee. Kayti holds a BS in forestry from Michigan State University. Kayti, you're on.
Thanks, Tom. So glad to join you all here today for day 2. I am very excited to talk to you guys today a little bit about Tree Farm, what it is, what it's up to, and some new changes for 2021. So let me just pop open my presentation. And here we go. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A. And we'll be sure to try to get those answered for you. So again, I am Kayti Brinkman. I am a certified forester and also a registered forester in the state of Michigan, coming at you here today from Kalamazoo, Michigan, in southwest corner of the state. I've been on with the American Tree Farm System as a staff member since April of 2019, but like Tom mentioned, I was a vice chair for the Michigan program when I was a consulting forester previously. So the American Tree Farm System, we are a program of the American Forest Foundation. I am an employee of AFF. We are just one small program, one small department that works with the largest share of landowners. So we work with family forest landowners primarily to help provide education, professional resources, recognition of the good work that landowners are doing, certification of fiber, and representing you on Capitol Hill. And we'll go into that a little bit more. As being a part of AFF, like I said, we're just one small team of 6 staff members, but overall AFF represents a large gamut of different conservation projects and activities. The newest one being the Family Forest Carbon Program, which is just recently announced expansion into further states outside of its original pilot area of Pennsylvania. And that's a really interesting program that we hope that comes to Ohio in the near future, just not in 2021. And that's a very exciting adventure for landowners to be able to be paid for the work that they're doing that enhances carbon on their forest landscape. Also to note, for this Ohio group, we also work as a part of the White Oak Initiative. So that's a 17-state program that Ohio is a part of that helps to enhance white oak on the landscape to help ensure its future preservation. That's really led by the bourbon industry, actually, that came to us and wanted to ensure future supply of white oak for white oak barrels, but it's also expanded into other industries as well, including wildlife habitat and other end user products. Here at ATFS, our mission is to promote the growing of renewable resources on private lands while protecting environmental benefits and increasing public understanding of all benefits of productive forestry. We originally started as a program of warehouser back in 1941. The first tree farm was established in Northwest Washington State, owned by Weyerhaeuser, and that gave landowners a signal that industry was caring about what they were doing with their forest lands, and that they have an opportunity to join landowners like themselves. For a long time, you were just a member of Tree Farm and you got your sign. There was a lot of community events, being able to recognize the work that you're doing, especially on Capitol Hill, and with a few celebrity tree farmers like Andy Griffith, was a really fun time to be a part of Tree Farm. But in 2000, we kind of upped the game. So we became a certification organization and developed the first set of mandatory standards of sustainability. So that meant the landowners, to be a part of our program, needed to follow a set guideline of what they were doing on their property, and being able to adhere to those standards so that we could credibly say that our landowners are some of the best, and here's what they're doing. Again, in 2000, that was a really big year. The Sustainable Forestry Initiative recognized wood being harvested on certified tree farms as meeting their standards as well. So that means land or wood harvested off of land that is a part of Tree Farm, that wood is certified through the chain of custody with SFI. A few years later, in 2008, the Program for Endorsement of Forest Certification, based out of Geneva, Switzerland, was an international certification standard that recognized our certification. So we are internationally recognized and still to this day recognized by an international standard. And today we are still the largest and the oldest sustainable woodland system in America. The only oldest system is, I think, in Germany. So we are working with the biggest share of landowners, being that private family forest landowner, in the most interesting sector of the industry. Currently, we're at about 18 million acres enrolled in the program, and that's representing about 90,000 tree farms across 42 state programs, 15 independently managed groups, and 4 individual third-party certified tree farmers. So with that, an independently managed group is an organization that has their own tree farm system. They handle their own tree farmers, but they adhere to the same standards. They get the same sign. They're just not a part of the state program like Ohio is. So when you are working with landowners, or if you're a landowner yourself and you're wondering why should a landowner enroll in the program? The biggest benefit that we see and hear from landowners is that they have a lot of comfort and feel a lot of camaraderie about being a part of a community of like-minded people, that they can learn from one another, share what they're doing on their property, and really enjoy taking that time to get to know one another. Another big piece is that with Tree Farm, because they are adhering to that international standard, there's proof of their excellence, especially through certification. In particular with certification, what happens is every roughly 5 years, the Tree Farm programs that are certified go through a third-party certification assessment, where assessors come from a third-party auditing firm. They come through, they review all of the work that the state program is doing, all of the work that the landowners are doing as well, and they're able to show all of the good work that they're doing. It's a rigorous process, and Ohio just went through that starting in 2020. It was actually one of my last few trips before being stuck at home, but you know, they did an excellent job, and we were really proud of what they had to show. Additionally, landowners are showing that they are doing the good stewardship of their forest land. So you know that when you see that green sign, that landowner is doing what's best and doing what's right by their land for proper forest stewardship. It's really a badge of honor for those landowners to show to their neighbors, to their family and friends that they are part of a really big system. They're just one piece, but they're some of the best landowners out there. So a few landowner benefits. The first three of these bullets really come from the state programs, and we here at National wouldn't exist without these state programs, but different educational, informational, and communication opportunities where state tree farm programs such as Ohio put on landowner field days, outreach, educational workshops, so that landowners can be a part of the community, and they can learn a little bit more about what's new, what's coming up, what they really like about their tree farm. Again, that certification piece, being able to recognize their fiber as certified out on the market. In some areas, you might see that landowners in tree farm get market preference for being certified. A little bit of that in Ohio, but not as much. The biggest thing is, again, that community and that educational piece, to stay connected and stay informed. Additionally, being a part of Tree Farm, we represent all tree farmers in our system on Capitol Hill. We have a whole policy team that works with different members of Congress to be able to pass legislation that makes sense and help represent them for legislation that doesn't. So we have a whole team working tirelessly to make sure that your needs are being met and represented through Congress. So you might be thinking, well, that sounds kind of cool. What do I need to do? So for eligibility, we recognize acreage in tree farms from 10 to 10,000 contiguous forested acres. So that means you need to have at least 10 acres of woods, and it needs to all be in one contiguous forested parcel. It has to have a single legal ownership, so one distinct body of parcel of land. And it can include non-forested features like food plots or ponds or different openings. So if you have a property that has, you know, a block of forested wood, it might not be the whole parcel. It might be, you know, 20 acres of farmland and 20 acres of woods, that's perfectly acceptable as well. You just get a 20-acre tree farm on your 40-acre parcel, and your forester can work with you on that. We only recognize private landowners and public ownership below the state ownership level. So no state or federal land, but we do recognize city, county, municipal, school-owned forests can all be a part of tree farm, as long as it's not a publicly traded company with under 500 employees and gross timber receipts of under $7 million. It has to be non-industrial. So no longer are we a part of the days where Weyerhaeuser has tree farms. Instead, Weyerhaeuser has their foresters support tree farm through doing inspections of small landowners like yourself. You have to agree to conform to the standards of sustainability, which I'll get into what those are a little bit later. You also have to agree to participate in the third-party assessments if you get randomly selected. Again, that only happens every 5 years, and it's a subset. It's a small portion of the overall population of tree farms, so your likelihood of being selected is fairly low in a large program like Ohio. Those standards of sustainability that I just mentioned that you need to follow, they're broken down into a few different subcategories, but the 8 standards I have listed here. Some of the biggest ones is that the commitment to practicing sustainable forestry means that you must have a management plan that meets certain requirements. For the most part, any forest stewardship program, CAP 106 plan through NRCS, or other forest management plans usually work. And if they don't, we do recognize our different addendums to make sure that they can be added to your plan so you do meet the requirements. They're fairly standard in what the requirements are. So if you have a management plan already, you likely are very close to meeting that standard. Again, you have to comply with local laws, relevant laws, seeing that you're protecting air, water, and soil, including threatened and endangered species if it's relevant to your property. We also recognize all of the forest health, including invasive species, that all of that work that landowners are doing and that they're constantly monitoring on a regular basis for things of that nature. Being a part of the tree farm program does not mean that you can't harvest. Actually, we do encourage harvesting if it makes sense as an appropriate management tool. So along with that, the standards include that harvesting that you do on your property is being met with qualified natural resources professionals, and that you might consider things like contracts to make sure that you're protected as a landowner. If you're interested in all of this and you want to join the Ohio Tree Farm Program, what you need to do is contact your local forester. And if you don't have one, connect with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, and they will be able to connect you with a forester. You'll have a site visit to ensure that your forest management plan meets your what's on the ground, and also being able to show off to your inspector, your forester, what good things that you're doing on the ground. And then you have to agree to follow the standards. And likely, I've not encountered a landowner that wanted to enroll in tree farm that wasn't already meeting the standards. Usually when folks are raising their hand to join, it's because they already are doing good work. And it's just a matter of getting them recognized for that. And once you're a certified tree farm, you can have one of those really great green diamond signs. I believe, and Tom can always correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Ohio provides signs. But if you need additional signs, you can go to your different, you can go to our website and order more to post around your property. So for those of you who are already in the tree farm program, either as an inspecting forester or as a landowner yourself, stuff that has been new for us through 2020 and looking to the future for 2021. We are still in active COVID protocols for inspections on the ground. So what that means is there's a lot of options, especially for landowners, to be able to get inspections completed on their property. So what we do is we ask that all state programs follow their local state COVID guidelines as they're working on forest land, especially with our tree farmers. But we will recognize a full suite of different ways to get the inspection done, including a phone call with a landowner and visiting the land separately, visiting with the landowner but at a social distance, or following your local guidelines again. It's really up to the state program. So inspectors, if you're wondering a little bit more, be sure to reach out to the state committee if you have any questions about what's allowed. But again, we just ask that you stay safe in the woods. We know that being out in the woods in the open air and having space to distance is probably one of the safer activities that we can do right now. So, still get out in the woods, still walk your property, and, be sure to still try to help those tree farmers if you're an inspector. Last week, we just had our virtual National Leadership Conference, and I know quite a few folks on the panelist team here today were participants in that. We had over 350 registered participants at our National Leadership Conference. It was really great. We had 3 days of speakers similar to what you guys have set up here, all on Zoom. And though we would have liked to have some more face-to-face time, it was still very good to stay connected and reach out to some folks who otherwise might not have participated. And then also what's new is we have updated our standards of sustainability. So we revise the standards every 5 years, and that is a requirement of being recognized by the Program for Endorsement of Forest Certification. So traditionally, that's the previous standards were set to expire in 2020, but PEFC also had to update their standards, and they were a little bit behind in 2019. So we had to wait for them to finish theirs before we could start ours. But we finished that all last year, all virtual, and we were able to infuse emerging knowledge of forestry and be able to incorporate some feedback from not only our volunteers, but also from a majority of our feedback was actually from tree farmers. So we were able to do that. That was a very long process, like I said, that started in fall of 2019. Overseeing the whole process, and it was an independent standards review panel. So that was a cross section of the whole sector of forest products, forest landowners, private forestry, consulting foresters, universities, all sorts of different folks, including landowners. And that was managed by our certification manager. They met together, they had a couple different public comment periods. And like I said, a lot of landowners were the majority of our comments, wanting to make sure that their needs were represented, and we listened to those. They were able to put those together. It was put forward by all of the changes were put forward by the National Standards Implementation Committee. They reviewed that, approved it, and sent it off to our Board of Trustees, who reviewed and approved. So that means this year, all inspectors need to be retrained. But the good news is, if you're an inspector and you need training, we are offering a lot of virtual options, including an e-learning platform where you can take a training on your own time, at your own pace to get that done. And it lasts the lifetime of the standards, so 5 years instead of the previous 2-year lifetime of your training. So once you have it, you're good until the next standards revision, which we're expecting to be in 2026. If you guys have any questions, you can pop them in the chat now, but if you think of anything along the way, my email is kbrinkman@Forest Foundation, and you can also contact Cassie as the chair of the Ohio Tree Farm Program. So I will check the Q&A. Excellent question, Stan. I forgot to put that in there. So we currently only have 80 acres. Other than the cost of compliance, what is the cost to join the tree farm program? So one, I'll say 80 acres is larger than the average tree farm by a lot. So you have quite a large parcel, but currently in Ohio, there is no charge to join. It is free to landowners to be a part of the program. So just, doing what you're already doing on your property, that's your only cost. But there's no charge, there's no membership fee. The inspectors do not cost anything for you as a landowner.
Any other questions, folks? Now's the time to get all your answers squared away about Tree Farm. Great program.
We also have several Ohio tree farm inspectors and so on the call. So if you have questions for any of them, we have a little bit of time.
If we are in CAUV, which I think that's your tax relief program, can we do the tree farm too? And yes, there's no restrictions being a part of tree farm. It's a separate program, but they're often complementary. So you'll find a lot of landowners that are in both.
I actually am a tree farmer in Jackson County, and I just updated my tree farm management plan, and that was used to meet my requirements with the auditor in the county. So you can get a plan that often works for your CAUV as well.
Yes, yeah. Doug asked, what do you inspect? So usually what that means is they're just kind of looking to make sure it matches. It's not really an inspection in like a like oversight kind of manner. It's just a way for them to have a conversation with you as a landowner and make sure that your management plan matches what's on the ground. That's really the big part. And that's your opportunity with what we call an inspection. That's your opportunity to walk with your forester in the woods and be able to ask your questions and get to know your property a little bit more.
Kayti, could you describe just generally what the 8 standards involve?
So generally it's hard to generalize them because I could go on a whole spiel of the 8 standards, but for the most part, it's just that you're meeting federal and state guidelines of best management practices on your property, with making sure that you're enhancing your forest, and you're using known forest science to do that. Got a question here from David. Do you have any interaction with foresters from electricity rights of way? A little bit. So those are often utility foresters, and they focus on just on that corridor, and we're focused a little bit more on the larger forested landscape, but that doesn't mean that utility foresters can't be tree farm inspectors. Often they do have the education requirements. What do you see in the future about carbon credits? From Tim and Stephanie. So in the future, the American Forest Foundation Family Forest Carbon Program, that's a really interesting program, and I'll try to answer it here in 1 minute, but there's a huge increase in interest in working with family forest landowners. Family forest landowners are usually represent private family forest landowners are representing 40% which is the largest share of all forest land in the US. So folks are starting to turn to folks like yourself to increase carbon on the landscape. So right now we have a few promised buyers through the pilot program of the Family Forest Carbon Program, including Amazon, that's really interested in buying credits. The problem is usually with carbon markets with family forest landowners is that it's often really expensive. So we're trying to figure out ways to do it a little bit more like tree farm, where it's a sample and it's a periodic update rather than a full carbon inventory every year that you have to submit. That's largely a huge burden to landowners and just it's too much. So we're really hopeful with the pilot that it's going to be coming a little bit more to more folks as well. So a lot more to come. It's a really exciting time for the future. Are sample management plans available from Greg? Yes, they are available on our website, treefarmsystem.org. Let's see. I think I saw something in the chat too. Are there big changes for inspectors with the new standards? If so, can you summarize? No, I would say the two biggest changes with the standards is that we added a verbiage about genetically modified trees are not currently allowed on tree farm properties, but there's no stock out there for private landowners. So you shouldn't have to worry about that. We just had to put that in there and promise to keep up with the science and push back on PEFC if that becomes more of an issue. And two, the other thing is that we are now requiring records of pesticide usage to be kept. So pesticides, including herbicides, but that's in with the size, scale, and scope of the forest management. So if you have a landowner that's spot spraying for invasive species, a quick note of what they applied and when covers that requirement. A lot of landowners are already doing that. But if you're having aerial applications, we want to see contracts and whatnot. But it's not retroactive, so just start keeping track of those moving forward in the future.
Kayti, we're approaching the end of the time here. Notice one other question here from Bob Ball. Can you project when carbon credit program pilot may be available to tree farmers in Ohio?
That's a really good question. We cannot predict that, but since in the later half of 2021, we will be expanding into the upper Midwest, including Michigan. I'm hoping that you guys will be sooner within the next 2 to 5 years, I guess would probably be my answer. Don't quote me on that though.
Well, we'd certainly like to thank everyone who has participated with these questions. Thank you very much, Kayti. Really glad you could be with us today. We've got about a minute or so here, and we'll begin our next presentation